Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there were a king and a queen who had 11 sons and 1 daughter. This family had a happy and comfortable life. Children lived in luxury. But a day came when their happiness and comfort ended. The children's mother died, and they were alone. The little girl was trying to fill her mother's place. She read stories to his brothers and entertained them. The brothers sat around their little sister and listened to their sister's stories. She read stories to his brothers and entertained them. After a few months, the king took another wife, a mean woman who could not see the children and mistreated the children day and night. Instead of sugar, she poured sand into their tea and gave them dry bread instead of food. She took away their comfortable room and bed and gave them a dark room instead. A room without a floor and no bed in it. After a few days, the evil queen sent the girl to a village and entrusted her to a peasant family to work there. The wicked queen sent the girl to a village and entrusted her to a peasant family to work there. Now it was the turn of the boys to get them out of the palace somehow. He thought and thought. He tried different solutions and ended up in the lap of the old witch. The old witch gave a sly laugh and said, "It's up to me. I will teach you a poem that whenever you sing, the boys will change into birds and fly away." The wicked queen was delighted. He returned to the palace and read that verse. The boys flew away in the form of white swans. Some time passed and the princess learned about the fate of her brothers. She talked to the farmer's family and asked them for permission to go to the sea to find his brothers. But the sea was on the other side of the forest, and she had to pass through the forest. The princess walked. She walked in the forest for several days and nights until her legs were injured. One day, she met a woman in the forest with a basket of fruit in her hand. When the woman saw the princess, her heart burned, and she gave her some fruit and then showed her the way to the sea. When the woman saw the princess, her heart burned, and she gave her some fruit, and then showed her the way to the sea. The princess said goodbye to the old woman and went until she reached the sea. But there was no one by the sea. The girl sat down by the sea, and suddenly her eyes fell on 11 white swan feathers. Realizing that the feathers belonged to her brothers, he collected them and held them in his hand. Now she was sure that he could find his brothers. That day until near evening, the girl sat by the sea near sunset. Suddenly, 11 white strong were found in the sky, and the flyers came to the shore. When they sat on the beach, they turned into 11 young princes. The princess recognized her brothers. She ran towards them and called each one's name. The brothers were also happy to see their sister. "As long as the sun is in the sky, we are like swans," said the older brother. "When night falls, we become human. We live across the sea, a very beautiful place. It is better for you to come with us." They weaved a basket from the thin branches of trees and put their sister in it, and each of them took one side of it and flew away. The girl was happy to have found her brothers. The girl lived happily with her brothers in the forest. She always prayed that the spell of her brothers would be nullified. One night, the princess had a strange dream. An angel came to her in her dream and said to her, "If you want your brothers to be freed from this spell, you must weave clothes for them with nettle bushes. When they wear that outfit, their spell is nullified and they revert to their original form. Remember that you should not talk at all during this time." When the princess awoke, she went to the nettles and began to knit shirts for her brothers, but the nettles had poisonous stings and blistered the girl's hands. The princess worked day and night, weaving clothes from nettle bushes. He did not say anything, and her brothers were surprised by this. One day, something unfortunate happened. A prince came to the forest to hunt. The princess hid in a cave, fearing that her work would be delayed, but the prince's dog found her. The prince was surprised to see such a beautiful girl and took her with him to his palace to marry her. The marriage ceremony between the prince and the princess was performed, but the girl did not stop knitting clothes. The courtiers of the palace were surprised. They were talking behind the girl's back, and because the princess couldn't say anything and explain, every day this issue became more complicated. One of the courtiers, who always and everywhere took care of the princess, went to the prince every day and said that her actions were similar to the actions of witches, but because the prince loved his wife, he did not pay attention to these words.
But in the end, they said so much behind the princess's back that their words had an effect on the prince and he became pessimistic towards his wife. He could not understand what these clothes his wife was knitting for. The princess was put in prison, and for the crime of being a witch, she was to be executed in the city square. On the day of the princess's execution, they put her on a cart to take her to the city square, but she weaved clothes on the way to death. Suddenly, a few strong white heads appeared. White swans flew above the cart and the princess threw clothes at each one. Any prince who wore green clothes, his spell was broken and turned into a human form. People were surprised to see this scene. Now the princess could speak. The prince came to her and the princess told him the whole story. The prince took his wife back to the palace and apologized to her, and they lived together for many years.